Hello. Welcome to Georgetown University's briefing on the Department of Education's new Title IX regulations and its impacts on the university's policies and procedures. My name is Samantha Berner, and I serve as the university's Title IX coordinator and director of Title IX compliance. This presentation is designed to provide a brief overview of the new Title IX regulations, a description of the university's revision process this summer, and a discussion of the revised university policy on sexual misconduct. We have developed graphics and visual aids that I hope will help ease the understanding of any changes. I encourage you to reach out to me or any of the Deputy Title IX coordinators with any questions. In addition, you can find more information on the university's policies, procedures, resources, and contact information for all Title IX coordinators on the university's website, sexualassault.georgetown.edu. Thank you for joining today.
To give you a bit of background on how we got here, on May 6th, the Department of Education released new regulations regarding the duties of colleges and universities to address sexual misconduct under the federal law prohibiting sex discrimination, known as Title IX. These new regulations will be in effect beginning on August 14th of this fall. You may recall that the department initially released a draft of these regulations in November of 2018, and the university responded by engaging with the community, including hosting 11 listening sessions across all campuses to inform the comment the university submitted to the Department of Education. In addition, in January of 2020, university representatives met with the Office of Management and Budget and the Department of Education to express Georgetown's perspectives on the proposed Title IX regulations and reinforce the university's position statement on this matter. Upon the release of the new Title IX regulations on May 6th, the university has actively worked to review the regulations and determine what changes to our policies and procedures are necessary to ensure compliance. We immediately sent out a message to our community alerting them to the new regulations and have conducted briefings on the topic with key stakeholders. This effort has also included the formation of 8 working groups focused on legal review and analysis, communications and outreach, policy drafting for the various campus policies and procedures, and procedural best practices. These working groups have included faculty and staff, as well as students from each of our campuses. We understand that community engagement, particularly with students, is critical in ensuring that the changes we make reflect the values of our community and that our policies, procedures, and resources best serve those students they're meant to support. The new regulations have also necessitated that we revise the university's policy on sexual misconduct. So we have worked with the Faculty Senate and the university's board to ensure their approval is required. On July 6th, the Office of Student Conduct, the Office of Title IX Compliance, and 2 undergraduate students hosted a webinar on the new regulations, which included an overview of the new regulations, the university's draft policies and procedures as they relate to students, and a discussion based on questions submitted in advance of and during the webinar. A recording of the webinar is available on the sexualassault.georgetown.edu website. In addition, as a follow-up to the webinar, both offices hosted office hours on Thursday, July 9th to hear more from the community and answer additional questions. As we began our revision work, and particularly in light of the extremely quick turnaround we had to accomplish, having all policies and procedures ready by August 14th, we established a few guiding principles which informed our work. Of course, we need to ensure that Georgetown's policies and procedures comply with the new federal regulations. But given the extremely short window for implementation by August 14th, we aimed to limit changes primarily to those required by law and otherwise maintain our existing policies and procedures. Where the new regulations allowed the university to exercise discretion in adopting policy and procedural changes, for example, mandatory reporting policies and the standard of evidence to be used, Georgetown will seek longer-term, broad input from the community after the August 14th implementation date and will not make any changes at this time. Further, to the greatest extent possible, policies and procedures should adhere to the principles set forth in Georgetown's formal comment to the Department of Education, where we advocated for holding institutions and individuals accountable, encouraging reporting, and addressing the broad range of sexual misconduct that impacts Georgetown through fair, just, and supportive educational and administrative grievance procedures. With the new regulations being over 2,000 pages, I want to note a few key changes that we identified were necessary to the university's policies and procedures, and, just as importantly, all of the elements that remain the same. First, the new regulations narrow the definition of Title IX sexual harassment and require the university to dismiss formal Title IX complaints that fall outside this definition. More specifically, the regulations narrow the scope of behavior that can be addressed under Title IX by excluding conduct that occurs outside of university programs or activities or outside of the United States, for example, at a party at a private townhouse off campus or on a study abroad program. The new regulations limit the types of hostile environment claims that can be addressed under Title IX by only including those that are both severe and pervasive, not severe or pervasive as previously permitted, and the regulations prevent third parties outside of Georgetown from filing Title IX complaints against Georgetown community members. I'll note that the term Title IX sexual harassment also includes the terms sexual assault, dating violence, domestic violence, and stalking as defined by federal law. Institutions are required to dismiss formal Title IX complaints that do not fall within the scope of these new definitions. As a result, Georgetown has created new grievance processes to address conduct that falls within the new definition of Title IX sexual harassment, and separately, conduct that falls outside this new narrow definition, including conduct that occurs off campus and abroad. The new regulations also now mandate courtroom-like grievance procedures for Title IX cases. Most notably, the regulations require that the grievance process provides a live hearing, either in person or remote, and that the decision maker not be the same person as the investigator. While this is not a change for sexual misconduct cases against students, it required that we revise the process used for adjudicating Title IX cases against faculty and staff, which formerly utilized a single investigator model. During these live hearings, the grievance process must provide the opportunity for cross-examination by advisors. More specifically, each party's advisor may ask the other party and any witnesses all relevant questions and follow-up questions, including those challenging credibility. Such cross-examination, the live hearing, must be conducted directly, orally, and in real time. Cross-examination can never be done by the parties personally, and if a party does not have an advisor present at the live hearing, the school must provide without fee or charge to that party and advisors of the school's choice, who may be, but is not required to be, an attorney to conduct cross-examination on behalf of that party. If a party or witness does not submit to cross-examination at the live hearing, the decision makers cannot rely upon any statement of that party, including those made during the investigation. Finally, I want to note some positive news, which is that informal and alternative resolution is now more widely available under the new regulations, and we anticipate may be used more often given the required use of more formal and legalistic hearing procedures. In line with these efforts, we are working to expand our alternative resolution options, including restorative justice practices, to provide choices for students and community members for resolving complaints of sexual misconduct. Despite changes to the definitions of sexual misconduct, which I'll discuss in further detail next, I want to make clear that all conduct covered and prohibited by the university's sexual misconduct policy that was in place before the new regulations remain covered and prohibited by the university's updated policy on sexual misconduct. This includes off-campus conduct and conduct that occurs abroad. Although the new regulations state that Title IX does not apply to conduct that happens outside of the United States or outside of a school's education program or activity, the regulations provide that schools may still address such conduct under their own codes of conduct. Under Georgetown's updated policy on sexual misconduct, the university will continue to address sexual misconduct that occurs off campus, online, or while studying abroad in the same manner it always has. Further, Interim supportive measures, including no contact orders, modification of class schedules, alternate housing arrangements, academic modifications, Georgetown police escorts, and general safety planning continue to be widely available to survivors and those impacted, regardless of whether a formal complaint of sexual misconduct is filed. I also want to emphasize that just as before, students and community members still have the right to file a formal complaint of sexual misconduct with the university, with the police, with both entities, or not file a complaint at all. These are all options, and the choice is entirely up to the survivor. For sexual misconduct complaints filed with the university against a Georgetown student, hearings will continue to be available to adjudicate these cases, regardless of whether the alleged conduct falls within the subset of Title IX sexual harassment or whether it falls outside of that subset and within the broader sexual misconduct definition. In terms of the standard of evidence used in the university's formal complaint processes, the regulations allow each school to determine whether the standard of evidence to be used is a preponderance of the evidence, the university's current standard, or the clear and convincing standard, only requiring that the same standard apply for formal complaints against students, faculty, and staff. Based on our guiding principles previously mentioned, at this time, the university does not intend to change the standard from the preponderance of evidence. All faculty and staff continue to be mandatory reporters. University employees who receive disclosures of sexual misconduct from community members must report them to the appropriate campus deputy Title IX coordinator. The new regulations provide colleges and universities some flexibility on their mandatory reporting policies, but consistent with our guiding principles and based on the mixed feedback we heard in the listening sessions on this topic, the university does not intend to change this policy until we are able to hear more from our community. Next, I want to share an overview of the university's policy on sexual misconduct. Within this graphic, I think it's important to note that based on the new regulations, the university is required to use the federal law definitions for the terms sexual assault, dating violence, domestic violence, and stalking. These definitions look different than those in our former policy, but virtually all of the prohibited conduct under the former definitions are covered under these federal definitions. For the small amount of conduct that was not covered within the new definitions, we have built in a new term, other sex offenses, to ensure that the conduct continues to be prohibited. I want to make clear that although the definitions will be different, all conduct formerly covered by the university's sexual misconduct policy will continue to be covered under the new policy. Further, because the definition of Title IX sexual harassment has been narrowed, Title IX sexual harassment is now a subset of the broader term sexual misconduct. I want to highlight that supportive measures, including academic and protective measures, continue to be widely available to survivors and those impacted by sexual misconduct, regardless of whether someone files a formal complaint and regardless of whether their case falls within the subset of Title IX sexual harassment or within another category of sexual misconduct. Finally, as you look towards the bottom of the graphic, you'll see that for cases that fall within the new subset of conduct known as Title IX sexual harassment, there are specific procedural alterations made to our former sexual misconduct grievance procedures to adjudicate those cases in accordance with the new regulations. For all other cases, i.e. those that fall within the white box of sexual misconduct, complaints will proceed under the university's former grievance procedures in place before August 14th. Each Georgetown campus and IDEA have developed specific grievance procedures for complaints of sexual misconduct, which include procedures for complaints of Title IX sexual harassment. You can find a link to each of these grievance procedures on our website at sexualassault.georgetown.edu. To conclude, I want to leave you with some information on our next steps. Now that the new regulations are in effect, it is imperative to train and educate the community on our new policies and procedures. We have already begun our work in meeting with key campus partners, students, and faculty, and will continue that work to ensure that individuals are aware of what has changed and, equally as important, what remains consistent. Just as we always have, we want to continue to support students and community members during this transition, including reminding students of the resources and supports available, particularly the confidential counseling services. Finally, we want to be sure that we continue to engage with, hear from, and communicate with the Georgetown community. We recognize that the new regulations and our new policies and procedures directly impact you, our students, faculty, and staff. We want you to be informed, know about your options, be familiar with resources, and know that the university is here to help. We also don't want this to be the end of the conversation. We want you to come to our office hours, invite us to meet you and your peers in your spaces or through your student organizations, and to be partners in this work. Eradicating sexual misconduct at Georgetown requires that we all work together to make our campus and community a welcoming, inclusive, and safe environment for everyone. Thank you for participating in this briefing. As noted, more information, including the contact information of the university's Title IX coordinator, as well as information on our new policies, procedures, and resources, can all be found at sexualassault.georgetown.edu.